The Korean Mafia has a rule. No one steals from the syndicate. I didn't steal money, or jewels, or territory. I stole a life. I kept the heir he told me to destroy. Now, he's locked me in his penthouse and told me I have two choices: give him the boy and leave, or become the Mafia's prisoner for life. The penthouse was a cathedral of glass and cold, gray marble, perched so high above Seoul that the lights of the city below looked like fallen stars. But inside, the air was thick with the scent of expensive tobacco and a terrifying, familiar cologne, sandalwood in winter rain. I felt the cold stone of the wall pressing against my shoulder blades. I had nowhere left to run. I asked you a question, Zuri. Kang Ji-Woon's voice was a low, dangerous rumble. He didn't scream. Men like him didn't need to. He placed one hand on the wall beside my head, his tall, athletic frame casting a shadow that swallowed me whole. He was wearing a black silk shirt with the top two buttons undone, revealing the edge of a tattoo, the dragon of the Kang Syndicate, coiling up his throat. In his other hand, he held a crumpled photograph. It was a picture of my son, Leo, playing in a park in Atlanta. "He's mine," I gasped, my voice trembling despite the fire in my soul. I looked up at him, my dark skin contrasting sharply against the pristine white of his marble walls. "You forfeited your right to him the day you threw the check at me and told me to erase him." Ji-Woon leaned in closer, his face inches from mine. His eyes, those obsidian eyes that I used to see in my dreams, were now burning with a mixture of cold fury and something else. Something that looked like hunger. "The Kang Syndicate has a rule, Zuri," he whispered, his breath warm against my ear. "No one steals from us. Not a penny, not a piece of territory, and certainly not a life. You didn't just lie to me. You stole the heir to a $3 billion empire. You took my blood and hid it in a country I couldn't reach. I saved him," I shouted, the tears finally breaking. "I saved him from you. From your father. From this life where children are just pieces on a chessboard." Ji-Woon's grip on the wall tightened, his knuckles turning white. "And yet, here you are. Back in my city. Did you really think my shadow didn't reach across the ocean? I've known where you were for 3 years, Zuri. I was waiting. I wanted to see if you would ever tell me the truth." He dropped the photo and grabbed my chin, forcing me to look at him. "But now the chairman knows. My father is coming for the boy. And unlike me, my father doesn't care if you live or die. He only wants the bloodline." My heart stopped. The chairman, the man who had ordered my removal 5 years ago, was a monster who made Ji-Woon look like a saint. "You have two choices, Zuri," Ji-Woon said, his thumb brushing over my lower lip in a gesture that was half threat, half caress. "Option 1, you give me the boy. I'll put him on a private jet to a hidden estate in Jeju where my father can't find him. You go back to America, and I make sure you never see him again. You'll be rich, and you'll be free." I felt a sob rise in my throat. "And option 2? Ji-Woon's eyes darkened, a predatory smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. He stepped even closer, his body heat radiating through my thin dress. "Option 2, you stay. You stay here, in this penthouse, under my watch. You become my prisoner, my shadow, my whatever I want you to be. In exchange, I protect you both. I go to war with my father, and I keep Leo by your side. But you will never leave Seoul again. You will belong to me, just like you did 5 years ago." I looked at the man I had once loved with everything I had, the man who was now offering me a gilded cage. I looked at the door, then back at his cruel, beautiful face. "You're a monster," I whispered. "I'm a Kang," he corrected, his voice dropping to a seductive silk. "And I want my family back." The penthouse elevator chimed a sound that usually signaled luxury, but today, it sounded like the cocking of a hidden gun. Ji-Woon didn't move his hand from the wall. He remained hovered over me, his scent wrapping around me like a silken shroud. He was waiting for my answer, his dark eyes searching mine for a surrender I wasn't ready to give. But the heavy, rhythmic thud of several pairs of boots on the marble floor told us our time for negotiation was over. "He's here," Ji-Woon whispered, his voice losing its predatory warmth and turning into shards of ice. He stepped back, putting a protective, yet possessive, distance between us. "Stay behind me. Do not speak unless I look at you. My father is not a man who values words from outsiders." The double doors swung open. Chairman Kang looked like a relic carved from old, bitter wood. He was in his late 70s, leaning on a cane topped with a silver dragon's head, but his posture was as straight as a blade. Behind him stood 4 enforcers, men with stone-cold faces and hands tucked behind their backs, ready to draw. The chairman's eyes bypassed his son entirely. They landed on me. The girl from Georgia, the old man rasped. His voice sounded like dry leaves skittering across a grave. I was told you were efficient, Ji-Woon. I was told the problem was dealt with 5 years ago. I do not like being lied to by my own flesh and blood. I didn't lie, father, Ji-Woon said, his voice flat and fearless. He stepped half an inch to the left, blocking the chairman's view of me. I gave her the order. I gave her the money. What she did after she left Korean soil was out of my jurisdiction until now. Jurisdiction. The chairman chuckled, a dry, hacking sound. The Kang bloodline is my jurisdiction. Where is the boy? My heart plummeted. My hands began to shake, and I gripped the fabric of my dress so hard my knuckles turned a ghostly white. You aren't touching him, I said, my voice cracking but loud. The chairman's gaze snapped to mine. The air in the room turned freezing. It speaks, he said, directed at Ji-Woon. You allowed this woman to keep a Kang heir in a foreign land, raised on foreign values? He is the only grandson of this syndicate. He is not a pet for you to play house with. He is my son. I stood my ground, stepping out from behind Ji-Woon. And I am an African-American woman who raised him with love and a name that doesn't involve your syndicate. He doesn't even know who you are. The chairman raised his cane and pointed the silver dragon head at me. He will know. He will learn. By the time I am finished with him, he won't remember the color of your face or the sound of your voice. He will be a king. No, I screamed. Ji-Woon moved faster than I could track. He grabbed the top of his father's cane, his grip so tight the silver groaned. Enough, Ji-Woon growled. The power dynamic in the room shifted instantly. The enforcers shifted their weight, their hands moving toward their waistbands. He stays with his mother. Under my roof. If you try to take him by force, father, you'll find out exactly how much of your ruthlessness I've inherited. I will burn the syndicate to the ground before I let you turn my son into a weapon. The silence that followed was suffocating. The chairman stared at his son, searching for a bluff. He found none. You are choosing a woman over your legacy, the chairman asked. I am choosing my blood, Ji-Woon replied. And she is the mother of that blood. She stays. He stays. This is my territory now. The chairman pulled his cane back, a sneer twisting his aged features. Fine. Keep your little family. But remember, Ji-Woon, a wolf who protects a sheep eventually becomes a target for the rest of the pack. The board will not accept a half-blood heir quietly. You've just started a war you aren't prepared to win. Without another word, the old man turned and marched out, his enforcers trailing behind him like shadows. The moment the doors closed, the tension snapped. I collapsed onto the velvet sofa, my legs finally giving out. I buried my face in my hands, the reality of the situation crashing down. I was trapped in a Mafia war, 7,000 miles from home, with the man I had lied to for half a decade. I felt the sofa sink next to me. A heavy, warm hand landed on the back of my neck. You heard him, Zuri, Ji-Woon said, his voice back to that dark, silk-over-steel tone. You can't go back to the airport. You can't go back to Atlanta. My father's men are already at the gates. You belong to the Kang Syndicate now. I looked up at him, my eyes blurring with tears. Is that what you wanted? For your father to threaten us so I'd have no choice but to stay? Ji-Woon leaned in, his thumb wiping a stray tear from my cheek. His touch was electric, a painful reminder of the nights we spent together before everything went to hell. I didn't need my father to threaten you to make you stay, he whispered, his eyes dropping to my lips. I've had 5 years of emptiness to plan exactly what I'd do when I found you. This is just the beginning, Zuri. You're going to tell me every detail of the life you stole from me, and then, you're going to spend the rest of your life making it up to me. He stood up, looking toward the hallway where Leo was sleeping. Get some rest. Tomorrow, the world finds out the Prince of Seoul has a queen and an heir. The morning light in Seoul didn't feel like the sun in Atlanta. In Georgia, the sun was a warm hug. Here, it was a cold, piercing spotlight. I woke up in a bed that could have fit 4 people, draped in silk sheets that cost more than my monthly mortgage back home. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then, I saw the 2 maids standing at the foot of the bed, heads bowed, holding a collection of designer garment bags. Mr. Kang requests your presence in the dressing suite, one of them said in hesitant English. I sat up, my curls a wild halo around my head, my dark skin stark against the white silk. Where is my son? I demanded, my voice raspy with sleep and fear. The young master is in the garden with the security detail, she replied. He is, very happy. He thinks he is in a castle with snipers on the roof, I thought bitterly. I followed them to a room that looked like a boutique in Gangnam. Every wall was lined with glass cases of jewelry, shoes, and dresses. Standing in the center of the room, looking at his watch, was Ji-Woon. He had traded his silk shirt for a three-piece black suit. He looked like the king of a world I didn't want to live in. "You're late," he said, his eyes scanning me from head to toe. The heat in his gaze made my skin prickle. "We have a gala tonight. The syndicate board needs to see that I haven't lost my mind and that the woman who carries the Kang heir is worthy of the title." "I don't care about your titles, Ji-Woon," I snapped, walking right up to him. I was 5'7", but he still towered over me. "I want my passport. I want to take Leo and go home." Ji-Woon reached out, his fingers tracing the line of my jaw before sliding into my hair, gripping the back of my head just firmly enough to make me gasp. "This is your home now, Zuri. You haven't realized it yet, but the moment my father walked out of that room last night, your life in America died. You are a target now. If you leave this penthouse without my protection, you won't make it to the airport." He leaned in, his lips brushing against my forehead. "Now, pick a dress. Something that screams power. I want them to be afraid of you." For the next 3 hours, I was treated like a doll. They did my hair, slicking back the sides and letting my natural texture crown my head in a sophisticated, regal updo. They applied makeup that highlighted my deep mahogany skin, using gold leaf on my eyelids that caught the light like fire. Finally, I stepped into the dress Ji-Woon had chosen. It was a floor-length gown of deep emerald green velvet, with a slit that went up to my mid-thigh and a plunging neckline that demanded attention. When I stepped out, Ji-Woon stopped talking to his bodyguard. The phone in his hand almost slipped. He walked toward me, his movements slow and deliberate. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a velvet box. Inside was a necklace of emeralds and black diamonds, the colors of the Kang Syndicate. "Turn around," he commanded. I obeyed, my heart thumping against my ribs. I felt his cold fingers on my neck as he fastened the heavy jewels. But then, he didn't pull away. He leaned down, pressing his face into the crook of my neck, inhaling deeply. "I spent 5 years trying to burn the memory of your scent out of my brain," he whispered, his voice vibrating against my skin. "I dated models, actresses, daughters of politicians. None of them mattered. I hated you for leaving, Zuri. But I hated myself more for letting you go." I closed my eyes, the old feelings I had tried so hard to bury rushing back like a flood. "You didn't let me go, Ji-Woon. You threw me away." "I saved your life," he hissed, turning me around to face him. "My father was going to have you killed the moment he found out you were pregnant. I thought if I sent you away with enough money, you'd be safe. I didn't think you'd be brave enough or foolish enough to keep the child." He looked at my lips, and for a second, I thought he was going to kiss me. I wanted him to. I wanted to scream at him. I was a mess of conflicting emotions. "Tonight," he said, his voice hardening, "every man in that room will want to kill me to take my throne. And every woman will want to ruin you. Do not show them an ounce of weakness. You are Zuri Adisa, the woman who survived the Kang prince. Tonight, you show them you are the woman who will rule him." The venue was a private estate on the outskirts of Seoul, surrounded by high stone walls and men with submachine guns hidden under their coats. As we stepped out of the black limousine, the camera flashes were blinding. This wasn't just a Mafia meeting, it was the coming out of the hidden heir. Ji-Woon tucked my arm into his hand resting firmly over mine. "Smile, Zuri. You're the most dangerous woman in Korea tonight." We entered the ballroom, and the music stopped. Hundreds of people, the elite of the Korean underworld, turned to stare. I saw the whispers. I saw the shocked looks at the color of my skin and the defiance in my eyes. But then, the chairman appeared at the top of the grand staircase. Beside him was a young Korean woman in a white dress, looking like a porcelain doll. "Ah, Ji-Woon," the chairman's voice boomed over the crowd. "You've brought your guest. I'd like you to reacquaint yourself with Min-ah. Her father and I have just finalized the merger of our shipping territories. And as part of the deal, your engagement will be announced tonight." The room went dead silent. I felt Ji-Woon's body turn to granite beside me. He looked at his father, then at the girl, then back to me. The trap was set. The chairman wasn't just trying to take Leo, he was trying to replace me. He was telling the world that I was nothing more than a temporary mistake, a surrogate for the real Kang family. Ji-Woon's grip on my hand tightened until it almost hurt. He didn't look at the chairman. He looked directly at the crowd. "My father is getting old," Ji-Woon said, his voice amplified by the silent room. "He forgets that the king makes the laws, not the retired. There will be no engagement to Min-ah. He pulled me closer, his arm wrapping around my waist in a move of pure defiance. This is Zuri Adissa. She is the mother of my son, the future head of the syndicate. And if any of you have a problem with her standing by my side, you can discuss it with me, in the alleyway. The gasps were audible. Ji-Woon hadn't just defended me, he had declared war on the tradition of his entire culture. In that moment, I realized I wasn't just a prisoner. I was the fuse to a bomb that was about to blow Seoul apart. The air in the ballroom didn't just turn cold, it turned lethal. Ji-Woon's declaration hadn't just insulted his father, it had shattered a multi-billion-dollar alliance. I could feel the eyes of every syndicate member on us, some with respect, but most with a thirst for blood. You've signed your death warrant, my son, the chairman whispered from the stairs, his face a mask of ancient rage. Before Ji-Woon could respond, the massive crystal chandelier above the dance floor flickered once, twice, and then exploded into a million jagged shards. The room plummeted into darkness. Get down, Ji-Woon roared. He didn't just push me, he tackled me, his heavy frame shielding my body as the sound of suppressed gunfire began to chew through the silence. Screams erupted. The elite of Seoul, who seconds ago were sipping champagne, were now crawling over each other in a desperate bid for the exits. Zuri, look at me, Ji-Woon hissed, his face inches from mine in the dark. The only light came from the red emergency exit signs, reflecting in his eyes like twin fires. Stay low. Grip my belt and do not let go. If we get separated, you're dead. Do you understand? Where's Leo? I choked out, my heart vibrating with a terror I had never felt before. He's already being moved to the extraction point by my best men. He's safe. Now, move. We stayed in the shadows, moving like ghosts through the chaos. Ji-Woon pulled a sleek, silver handgun from a holster I hadn't even noticed beneath his tuxedo. He moved with a terrifying, mechanical grace. Every time a shadow moved toward us, he fired 2 taps, precise and final. We burst through a side service door into the pouring Seoul rain. A black motorcycle was idling in the alleyway, its rider already dead on the pavement. Climb on, Ji-Woon commanded, kicking the body aside and swinging his leg over the bike. Ji-Woon, I can't. Climb. On. I wrapped my arms around his waist, burying my face in his soaked velvet blazer. He twisted the throttle, and the bike roared to life, tearing through the narrow, neon-lit alleys of Gangnam like a bullet. The rain felt like needles against my skin, but the heat radiating from Ji-Woon was the only thing keeping me grounded. 40 minutes later, we skidded to a halt in front of an unmarked industrial warehouse near the Han River. Inside was a hidden loft, a minimalist, concrete bunker filled with monitors, weapons, and a single, large bed. The silence of the safe house was deafening after the gunfire. Ji-Woon slammed the heavy steel door and locked it, his chest heaving. He turned around, his tuxedo jacket torn, someone else's blood splattered across his white shirt. Check yourself, he rasped, his eyes frantic. Are you hit? Zuri, tell me you're not hit. I'm fine, I said, my voice trembling as I leaned against a concrete pillar. But you're bleeding. I walked toward him, my hand shaking. I reached out to touch a graze on his shoulder, but he caught my wrist in midair. His grip was iron, but his hand was shaking just as much as mine. Why? I whispered, looking into his eyes. Why did you do that? You could have just stayed with Min-ah. You could have had the alliance. You could have kept your throne. Ji-Woon let go of my wrist, but he didn't move away. He stepped into my space, his shadow looming over me. Because I lied, he said, his voice breaking for the first time in 5 years. I told myself I was tracking you for intel. I told myself I was watching you to make sure the Kang bloodline wasn't being used against me. But the truth is, I couldn't stop looking. Every photo my spies sent me, every time I saw you smiling at a park in Atlanta, or working at your desk, I felt like I was suffocating. He reached into a hidden drawer in the desk nearby and pulled out a stack of envelopes. They weren't spy reports. They were letters, hundreds of them addressed to me, but never sent. I wrote to you every night, he confessed, his voice a raw, jagged edge. I hated you for taking my heart with you when you left. And when I saw that boy at the airport, when I saw my own soul reflected in his eyes and realized you had kept him, I realized I didn't want the syndicate. I didn't want the throne. I just wanted the 5 years I lost. The anger I had been holding onto for 5 years began to melt, replaced by a devastating, beautiful ache. I looked at the man who had been my villain, my lover, and now, my protector. You sent me away, Ji-Woon, I reminded him, my voice barely a whisper. And I've regretted it every second since, he replied. He reached out, his hand cupping the back of my neck, pulling me forward until our foreheads touched. The rain was still dripping from our hair, pooling on the floor between us. I'm not a good man, Zuri. I'm a monster born into a world of monsters. But for you, for him, I will burn this city to ash. Just tell me you don't hate me anymore. Tell me there's still something left of the girl who used to kiss me on the rooftop. I looked up at him, the emeralds at my neck feeling heavy and cold, but my heart feeling like it was on fire. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. Instead, I reached up and grabbed the lapels of his ruined tuxedo, pulling him down until our lips met. It wasn't a soft kiss. It was a collision. It was 5 years of secrets, 5 years of longing, and 5 years of pain exploding all at once. In that concrete bunker, surrounded by the machinery of war, the ice prince of Seoul finally melted. And as he lifted me onto the cold metal desk, his hands possessive and desperate on my skin, I realized I wasn't his prisoner. We were both prisoners of a love that was never supposed to survive. The dawn over the Han River was a bruised purple, a sky that looked like it had been beaten into submission. Inside the safe house, the heat of the night before still lingered in the air, but the cold reality of our situation returned with a single, vibrating phone on a metal table. Ji-Woon answered it on the first ring. I watched his face, the way his jaw turned to granite, the way his obsidian eyes went completely dead. If there is a single scratch on him, Ji-Woon said into the phone, his voice a lethal whisper, I won't just kill you, father. I will erase the Kang name from history. He hung up. The silence that followed was terrifying. He has Leo, I said, the words feeling like ash in my mouth. Your father took him. He took him to the old estate, Ji-Woon said, already moving toward the weapon locker. He threw a tactical vest onto the bed. He thinks he can use my son to force me into the marriage with Mina. He thinks I'm still the boy he can break. I grabbed the vest. I'm coming with you. Ji-Woon stopped, a heavy rifle in his hand. No. It's a slaughterhouse, Zuri. You stay here. I have a team coming too. I am an African-American woman who raised that boy alone in a city that didn't know his name, I snapped, stepping into his space, my eyes flashing with a fire that matched his own. I have fought for him every day of his life. You think I'm going to sit in a bunker while a monster holds him? Give me a vest, Ji-Woon, or I'll find my own way there. A slow, dark smirk spread across Ji-Woon's face, a look of pride, of recognition. You really are the queen I've been waiting for. The old estate was a fortress of traditional Hanok architecture surrounded by high stone walls and modern security. It was the ancestral heart of the syndicate. We didn't go in with a plan. We went in with a storm. Ji-Woon's loyalist soldiers breached the gates with explosives that shook the very foundations of the mountain. I stayed low, trailing behind Ji-Woon, a handgun he'd taught me to use in the car gripped in my hands. The air was filled with the scent of gunpowder and ancient pine. We fought through the courtyard, the shadows of the traditional curved roofs hiding snipers that Ji-Woon picked off with terrifying precision. We reached the great hall, where the chairman sat on a wooden throne, little Leo huddled in a chair beside him, looking brave but terrified. Step away from the boy, father, Ji-Woon commanded, his rifle leveled at the old man's chest. You would shoot your own father for a woman and a half-blood, the chairman sneered, his hand tightening on Leo's shoulder. I didn't wait for Ji-Woon to answer. I saw the chairman's lead enforcer raising a weapon from behind a screen. I didn't think. I fired. The enforcer slumped to the floor. The chairman's eyes widened. He hadn't expected the American girl to have blood on her hands. That half-blood is the only future you have left, I shouted, my voice echoing off the ancient timber beams. And if you touch him again, I won't need Ji-Woon to finish this. The chairman looked at his son, then at me, and finally at the army of men standing behind Ji-Woon. He realized the truth, the syndicate was no longer his. The men weren't bowing to the chairman, they were bowing to the new king. Slowly, the old man let go of Leo. Mama! Leo screamed, sprinting toward me. I caught him in my arms, burying my face in his neck, sobbing with a relief that felt like a rebirth. Ji-Woon stepped forward, but he didn't kill his father. That would be too easy. You're done, Ji-Woon said, looking down at the man who had ruled him with fear for 30 years. I'm sending you to the temple in the north. You will live out your days in silence, watching from the mountains as I build a syndicate that looks nothing like yours. You are a ghost, father. And ghosts don't lead. 6 months later. I stood on the balcony of the Kang headquarters, the wind whipping through my hair. I was wearing a suit of deep crimson, the color of blood and victory. Below us, Seoul was a sea of lights, and for the first time, it didn't feel like a prison. I felt Ji-Woon's arms wrap around my waist from behind. He leaned his chin on my shoulder, his presence a constant, grounding heat. The board signed the final papers today, he whispered. They've accepted the new succession laws. Leo is the official heir. And you are the first female director in the history of the syndicate. I turned in his arms, looking into the eyes of the man who had once tried to pay me to disappear. And what about us, Ji-Woon? We're not a normal family. We're standing on a mountain of secrets. Ji-Woon reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring, not a diamond, but a black opal that shimmered with every color of the soul. Normal is for people who haven't survived what we have, he said, sliding the ring onto my finger. 5 years ago, I told you to leave because I was a coward. Today, I'm asking you to stay because I'm a king who realizes he's nothing without his queen. I looked at the ring, then up at the Seoul skyline, and finally at the man I loved. I'm not going anywhere, Ji-Woon. But if you ever try to give me a check to leave again. He laughed, a dark, beautiful sound that echoed over the city. I think I've learned my lesson, Zuri. You're far too expensive to lose twice. As the sun set over dark Seoul, I realized the mistake from 5 years ago hadn't been the baby. It hadn't even been the love. The only mistake was thinking that the world could ever keep us apart 6 months later. I stood on the balcony of the Kang headquarters, the wind whipping through my hair. I was wearing a suit of deep crimson, the color of blood and victory. Below us, Seoul was a sea of lights, and for the first time, it didn't feel like a prison. I felt Ji-Woon's arms wrap around my waist from behind. He leaned his chin on my shoulder, his presence a constant, grounding heat. The board signed the final papers today, he whispered. They've accepted the new succession laws. Leo is the official heir. And you are the first female director in the history of the syndicate. I turned in his arms, looking into the eyes of the man who had once tried to pay me to disappear. And what about us, Ji-Woon? We're not a normal family. We're standing on a mountain of secrets. Ji-Woon reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring, not a diamond, but a black opal that shimmered with every color of the soul. Normal is for people who haven't survived what we have, he said, sliding the ring onto my finger. 5 years ago, I told you to leave because I was a coward. Today, I'm asking you to stay because I'm a king who realizes he's nothing without his queen. I looked at the ring, then up at the Seoul skyline, and finally at the man I loved. I'm not going anywhere, Ji-Woon. But if you ever try to give me a check to leave again. He laughed, a dark, beautiful sound that echoed over the city. I think I've learned my lesson, Zuri. You're far too expensive to lose twice. As the sun set over dark Seoul, I realized the mistake from 5 years ago hadn't been the baby. It hadn't even been the love. The only mistake was thinking that the world could ever keep us apart.